Hi guys, how's it going? This is a continuation of Mildly Interested, following the first reading. So chapter -3 we're up to. Okay. Coffee gave him an erection. As much as it bulged from his pyjamas, there was nobody around to see it anyway. He could reach the kitchen just a few feet away from his bedroom, find his Italian coffee maker, open it up by unscrewing the two ends, go to the fridge and retrieve the coffee, fill it up and screw it back together, all without opening his eyes. It must have been the wafting smell of the coffee, or it could have been the eager longing for its pleasurable taste and bold influences that tricked his mind into forcing blood into his penis. But whatever it was there, and until he opened his eyes, sat down and sipped the milky brown beverage, the bulge didn't go away. It was another day, another dollar. He didn't care much for his work. He barely even noticed that he had a workplace. And only did when he was reminded by some overzealous individual trying to get ahead in the office. The office, or what he called it, the orifice, was merely an extension of the playground of any school. Deals could be done, sometimes you'd play games, other times it was scary, but mostly you never took it too serious. He sat at his desk and typed on the keyboard, flicked the mouse about and rocked back and forth in his chair. Now and again the phone would ring, or he'd have to make a phone call to a prospective client, but most of the day was spent searching the net, looking at porn or planning his weekend. He shared a cubicle with another. They had become best friends since day one because they sat next to each other and they had in common a general disdain for anything regarded as productive. On the weekends he'd go night clubbing or sit in a bar and drink beer with his friends. On occasion he'd pick up some random chick, take her home and practice some of the moves he'd learned from memorising porn, and then the next day he'd begin again by sitting on the balcony of his one-bedroom apartment in Queens, sipping coffee and contemplating how he could con the next girl into doing some housework for him while he dreamt of their erotic encounter. It couldn't be too difficult, he thought. Girls are trained by their mums from a very early age to clean up after their brothers and fathers, so really it was just a natural extension. He was 30 years old and a few months. He previously shared an apartment with a few others he'd met at a bar. They shared the same interests or non-interest in work, but eventually the state of the place, the escalating shared bills and happy-go-lucky attitude changed to overt hostility. Manhattan was traded for Queens, and the life of a full-fledged bachelorhood could be put into action. At least living by himself, he didn't have to answer to anyone. If he didn't want to tidy up, he didn't have to. His morning erection could go undeterred in full view, and the bills were all his. That way he had no surprises except whether or not the next hottie was shaved, had any discerning tattoos, or carried a handgun. He didn't love his life by any means. It's just that he didn't think about it as such. Never planned anything further than the weekend, and his career aspirations were about as solid as a vapour from a Manhattan street vent. The thing that drove him to really get up in the morning was something that his dad told him when he was young. He said, "Son, whatever you do in life, wherever life takes you, and which part of the planet you end up, you have to remember one thing. If you find a hole, plug it." He wasn't even sure what he'd meant by that little gem of wisdom until many years later, sliding down the leather back of a booth at McDougal's bar while helping with the evaporation of legal toxins, he overheard some drunks talking about how they'd plugged this blonde chick from Brooklyn, only to find out later that they'd both did her on the same night. Plugged rang in his ear. He tried to focus on what his father had said all those years ago, but it was too late. Deep within, he came to the conclusion that he'd inherited the shallow ideals of a surly drunk, and then he went about his business concocting all manner of ways to seduce women. Chapter -2. A lovely tree revealed itself as she came across the rise. It stood amongst others of the same kind, but somehow it stood out. Its leaves were shining, its branches a little less bent, and the others it gained a little less bent than the others, and it gained height, clutching for the blue sky and warm sun as if it were suckling from the mother universe. Small birds as big as a finger hopped from branch to branch, their little heads like stop motion, giving away their intentions and next move. She stood a little back from the tree and watched. They noticed her, but didn't do anything else about it except keep it in the back of their minds. Threats were more apparent, like bigger birds annoyed them for being on their tree, or the wandering slither of a death adder. What was going on in her mind was less apparent. From the outside she looked calm, her persona revealed an introspective girl who had a passing interest in flora and fauna, but looking deeper there was a woman at pains with a troubled life, a life of continuous heartache and unforgiving cruelties that manifested in every part of her life. She was only 5 years old, but lessons learned already had propelled her years above her actual age. In her mind she was a woman not unlike her hard-working mother, a mother that cared for her in every possible way, but a person that was thrown into parenting as quick as she could say tuck. She was barely 15 when her mother had pushed her into marriage with a slight yet endearing young man who happened to be of the same caste, available and keen to find himself a wife. A quick marriage, a spurious wedding night, and the next day she was pregnant with the first of many to come. As the years went by, the economy had dried up, jobs were difficult to come by, and her husband lost all hope, eventually throwing himself into a pit of cobras to die in agony without any dignity, leaving his wife with 6 children and no conceivable hope of finding a way to survive. Without help from family or friends, she coped as best she could, eventually being evicted from her slum house. She took the children to the tree where the birds gathered daily, fashioned a makeshift hut, and did her best to keep them alive until the rains came. One by one they perished, until the youngest little girl, who had grown attached to the tree, had the quick sense to leave her mother and find help. Of course, the mother, fearing she had lost all her kids, searched for her for 2 days, never giving up hope that she would be alive somehow, saved by the gods. It wasn't until day 3 that a car pulled up with medical personnel and the little girl riding in the front seat, the wind in her hair, that she saw that her little girl had brought help. The do-gooders did their good, digging a well, constructing some mud brick houses, and a communal building. All the while the little girl watched on. They spoke a funny language, but she learned it quick, pestering them, forever asking questions and helping by translating as best she could for her mother. She liked their colour. The whiteness reminded her of some of the birds on her favourite tree, and it was because of her that they bestowed upon her and her mother a stipend that came from afar, a gift from someone more fortunate that included one of the first houses, and they named the school building after her, calling it Little Bird. She was proud of being able to help her mother, and before she knew it, they were back on their feet. Little Bird was to become a healthy school. The little girl learned English, helped the teachers out, and slowly put the past behind her by writing letters to their sponsor in America. She collected returned letters and photos of the family and posted them on her wall like trophies. Her brothers and sisters who had died would live on her wall with different faces and strange coloured skin, but to her every day was a gift. She didn't question the gods. Her mother had taught her that things in the world happen in the world, some awful, some magnificent, but they all happened for a reason, on time, every time. Daily chores to help her mother, playing with friends near her favourite tree, and school were the things that focused her mind. She became an excellent student, whom others could only hope to aspire to, but she was never arrogant or boasting in her achievements. Okay, I think I'll end that for today, guys. It's 2 chapters. Thanks for listening, and I always forget to look here. It's so hard to look here because, yeah, anyway. I'll see you next time. See you next week.